What's going on, everybody? I wanted to do a quick video to showcase some of the cards in my personal collection. For length, I'm going to break this video down into 3 parts. This will be the first part where I'll show you some of my ultra rare creatures. But without further ado, let's kick it off with the Overworlders. And first and foremost, we have Maxor himself. I have 2 versions. The one on the right is actually one we pulled from a pack. It was the first ultra rare I ever pulled. Probably about 13 or 14 years ago, so very cool to have that card after all these years. Next, I have Heptad, the 2008 Hawaii Trade Conference. I know this is a pretty common card nowadays. I know a lot have popped up recently, but nonetheless, this one has really good stats, and Heptad's a great card, so I'm happy to have it in my collection. What is a little bit more unique is a German Aparu. For people who don't know, the German cards, I really like the German cards myself. I find they have a very rich color scheme relative to the English counterparts. And so I'll show you a couple examples of that. First and foremost, Purifying Mud. Again, the one on the right is English, the one on the left is German. And as you can see, the German one just is so much richer with the color scheme, specifically the yellow. And so I really love German cards. Another one right here, Garv. Again, you can see the one on the left, the German one, just is so much richer. The orange just really pops. The English one is kind of a little bit muted, so I really like German cards and I'd like to pick up more of them. Moving on, next up we have Tartarak. I have 2. Both of them have max energy. The one on the right is close to a 4 max. And the one on the left has max wisdom as well. Really powerful card. I love Tartarak. It's one of my favorites. Next up, we have Nadgerin Fluidmorphous Foe with max wisdom and max energy. For people who don't know, Nadgerin Fluidmorphous Foe is absolutely busted. It works very well with the card Heptagon Hail, which gives your opponent a bunch of Muja counters, which then in turn gives Nadgerin a bunch of Muja counters, which can be used to give your creatures extra energy. Next, we have Interest Nature Force, another great card, very popular in the TV show, and I really like to run it in my Elementalist deck. Of course, what collection would be complete without Maxor, Protector of Param? Again, very iconic in the anime. The art, you can see him fighting Aeon, and my copy has max courage and max energy. Getting close to the end of the Overworlders, of course, I have Aparu, once again, in the battle against Aeon. Really, really good card. That art is just second to none. Lastly, for the Overworlders, I have Nadgerin, High Muge of the Lake. Again, another really good card. One of the cards I put in all my Overworld decks. The ability is just so powerful, especially when there's a shortage of Muja counters. Moving on to the Underworlders, I have Lord Von Blute. He is a gold foil. But he has very good stats, and so I don't mind that as much. Again, just a very cool card. You'll see the newer version of him a little bit later in this video. Another cool card I want to show everybody is Hammerdoom Chant Caller. So I have 2 versions. The one on the right is, once again, is German, and what's interesting about this one is you can see the stats are very different than the English gold foil. I'm not sure why they're different. I think it might be a promo or something of that effect. If you know more about this Hammerdoom, please let me know in the comments below. What is probably my favorite Underworlder of all time, Lysta. I really like the art. The flavor text is awesome. The ability is really good. I'm very fortunate that my copy has max power, speed, and energy. Yeah, probably my favorite Underworlder of all time. I really like playing it in the card game. And I just think it's a really cool card. While I don't have the original Takinom from Roto, I do have the promo version, which is a 4 max, actually close to a 5 max. The art's not nearly as cool, but it's fine for my collection. So, also I have Lord Von Blute. This one has max power and energy. The stat distribution is okay. I wouldn't mind getting one with better stats, but it is what it is. And also I have to say that the art on him is just fantastic. Next up, we have Chaor. The Chaor has max speed and energy. It's actually close to a 4 max. And again, just a really cool card, really iconic card, and I really like having in my collection. Speaking of broken cards, we have none other than Zamul himself. This one has really good stat distribution, max speed and energy, and just such a powerful card, such a good ability. Really, really broken. It's understandable why he's on the ban list. Getting toward the end of the collection, we have Call, the Conqueror of the Underworld. My copy has max power, wisdom, and energy. And again, it's really nice because he's somewhat of a fighter with the Fire 5, but he also has 2 Mujic counters and a pretty cool ability, so I like putting him in a lot of different decks. Last but not least, for the Underworlders, I have Copond. There's not a lot to say about this card. He's pretty weak, but his ability is awesome, and he fits in pretty much any Underworld strategy, since the goal of the deck is to burn your opponent out for extra damage. Moving on to the Danians, of course, I have Alexia, the Danian Queen herself. Really good card. The Defender ability is more relevant now than it has ever been. And the art on it, again, is probably one of my favorite art. You can just see her commanding an army of minions. Next up, we have Necrabe, which a lot of people don't like, and I tend to agree with them. I think the card's so-so. The art is pretty cool. You can see the foiling on it, but the ability is pretty meh. So that is very contrasted with Kathraz, who is another one of my favorite cards. The art is really cool. I love the element types. I actually have a really cool combo deck that runs Kathraz that I might feature one of these days. It's a really cool way to exploit the elemental type ability. Next up, I have 3 Fleanders. The first 2 have max energy. The third one has average energy, but it's actually a 4 max. So a really cool card. Happy to have that in my collection. Next up, we have 2 Topars. Love the art on the card, but the stats on both of these are pretty unremarkable. The ability works fine in an Infect deck, but otherwise I don't think the card sees a lot of play. Now, cards that do see a lot of play, in fact, possibly too much play, are the 2 Lores, and that's why both of them are on the standard ban list. Lore Ancestral Caller is a really good card, works really well with Nequin, and also prevents your opponent's Nequins from coming back. Then the Lore High Muge of the Hive has a really cool ability that lets you recycle your Mujic. It works really well with cards like Tonal Destruction. Next up, we have Mepedians, and I'll start off with Onrehep. I love the art on Onrehep. It's really cool to see him coming out of the cave. The foiling on it is awesome. I have a gold foil Blazvaton. It's unfortunate that it's a gold foil, but it does have really good stats. It's a 3 max, close to a 4 max. Really powerful card, so happy to have that in my collection. Speaking of 4 maxes, I also have a 4 max Killeroin, Warbeast of the Duststorm. The speed is low, which is kind of a bummer, but again, just such a powerful card. Works really well in the Warbeast decks, and the ability is really good against any sort of recursion strategy that runs something like Talisman of the Mandalore. Headmastering Kaija is a card that a lot of people have mixed feelings about. I personally love him. He's a very powerful card, in particular the fact that invisibility can't be negated makes it really good when you're playing the Mepedian Strike Mirror match. And then if you lost initiative, you don't have to feel so bad because you get Strike 10. Horror, not sure how it's pronounced, but just one of my all-time favorite arts. You can just see how tall he is relative to the Conjurers. And again, you see in the picture, you see 4 Conjurers, which is very relevant when you consider his ability as Recklessness 50. It would take a whole army of Conjurers to be able to get him under control. My copy has really good stats, max energy, and 100 to all the disciplines. So really happy to have that. This is another card I have a really cool deck profile for, so hopefully I'll show it one of these days. Next up for Warbeast is Gintani, the Forgotten. My copy only has average energy, but that's fine. He's a really cool card. Has gone up a lot in value recently, and his ability is kind of a bummer, but it can be negated with stuff like Notes to Neverwhere. Last up for the Mopedians is Onrehep, High Muge of the Desert. Again, this card's on the ban list for a reason. It can copy any Mugic, which makes it really good with something like Tonal Destruction. And there's also some infinite loops where you can recur Mugic with him as well. Moving on to the Marillions. I don't have a lot in terms of Marillions, but I do have Cerulean the Song Thief. I believe this card is actually a short print. I think that was confirmed a long time ago on the Chaotic forums. Not really that hard to find nowadays, but cool to have nonetheless. Barakaton is really cool. Mine's a 3 max, power, speed, and energy. It's close to a 4 max, and I love the ability. It works really well with stuff like Mopedian Fulgurite. So again, another cool card. Happy to have it in my collection. The last Marillion I have is none other than Aoun himself, or itself. I can't show you the backside because it is a Chaotic sleeve, but I'm sure you've seen it before. Again, really happy to have this card in my collection. Last but not least, I have the past creatures. I have 2 Ursus, both of which have max energy. Again, what an iconic card in the show, really powerful in the TCG as well. This card almost broke the metagame with the Dagger deck that used a lot of the locations that removed elements. But fortunately, he's not on the ban list, so I really like playing him in decks. And last but not least, I have 1 Chromax. Max energy, not great disciplines, but really cool to have him. So yeah, that's all I have for you now. Thanks everybody for watching, and make sure to stay tuned for part 2.